If you've spent much time on YouTube, you'll have undoubtedly seen titles that look like this, or this, or this. And each time I see one of those videos, it triggers me a little bit. I shouldn't let it, but it does, and I'm going to explain the reason it does. Because I spent most of my life really wanting to be able to hit a high-level forehand because my forehand used to suck. I had poor timing, and because of that, I was never able to hit with power. Anytime I tried to hit with power, I would make way too many unforced errors. So it took me years and a lot of figuring out and fixing underlying problems to be able to develop a high-level forehand that I could use and I could attack with reliably in a match situation. And one of the most important things that I had to learn was how to make adjustments for the different types of ball that you deal with. Because if you're taking the ball on the rise, you have to make slight adjustments. If you're taking the ball above shoulder height, there's specific adjustments. When you're hitting a wide forehand, or you're hitting a short forehand, or you're moving back for a forehand, there's different variations in the way that you prepare, in the swing path, in the footwork patterns that you use. So that's the exact opposite of a perfect forehand. The hard thing about tennis is that every single shot you ever deal with is different. And that's why I get a little bit triggered when I see these titles, because I know how frustrating it is to not be able to do the things that I want to do on tennis court. I know how hard it is to make it happen. So I get a little bit triggered when there's videos that are potentially steering you down the wrong path. All these coaches know that there is no perfect way to hit the ball. We've just got to look at the three greatest players of all time: Federer, Nadal, Djokovic. They've got different grips, they've got different preparations, they've got different swing paths, they've got different follow-throughs. So that in itself tells us that there's no perfect way to hit the ball, in addition to the things that I've just explained about having to make all of the adjustments. So I want to try and steer you away from thinking about things in terms of the perfect forehand technique, and talk about how to approach your practice and how to think about training so that you can adapt to the different types of balls that you deal with, and so that you can develop a high level technique. And hopefully you find the video helpful. If you do, give me that thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel before, I'd really appreciate it if you could do that as well. And yeah, let's get into it. The two things that make tennis so hard are, firstly, you need to get in position to hit your shot. And then secondly, once you're in position, you have to make the timing work. Timing is like the critical piece of all strokes that allows you to hit with power and spin and control. So they're the two hard parts. And the reason it's so hard is because every single shot is different, which is why there is no perfect forehand. So when you're playing, as soon as your opponent makes contact with the ball, you have to start thinking and making calculations. You have to read where the ball is going as quickly as possible so that then you can move into position. But there isn't one right position, because there's different ways that you could deal with a specific shot. So if someone hits you a deep ball, potentially I could step in and I could take that ball on the rise. Potentially I might want to move back and allow that ball to drop, so then I can take the ball as it's dropping. So you've got different options. So once you see where the ball's going, you then have to decide what type of shot you think you're going to hit on that ball, and then you have to move into position. You have to set up in time. You have to be the right distance from the ball to make the shot mechanics work that you're going to be using, and then you have to execute your shot, and you have to start your swing at the right time. You have to adjust the swing speed, and you have to adjust the swing path. So the timing is very, very difficult, and that's one of the big differences between higher and lower level players. And I want to kind of play a little bit of some of my practice points. Now, I'm naturally a right-handed player, and I'm relearning to play left-handed. So this is stuff that I'm all having to think about consciously at the moment, because I'm having to relearn how to do everything all again. And what I want you to see is that every single shot that I'm hitting is different. My opponent isn't kindly giving me the ball in the same position so that I can hit this perfect swing path. He is placing it wherever he wants. Sometimes it's on my forehand, sometimes it's on my backhand, sometimes it's short, sometimes it's deep. And what I want you to notice is that when we get these forehands, the forehands look very different. So the forehand I've just hit, if we compare it to the next forehand I've hit, now I'm running out wide. It's a completely different shot. So to think that I can hit one type of forehand and make that work It just doesn't happen like that. The hard part is getting in the right position, reading what ball's coming towards you, making the decision about what type of shot that you're trying to hit, and then understanding how you need to manipulate and adjust your racket path to make that specific shot work. Now I want to compare that to doing some ball machine practice. Now here I'm trying to hit an open stance forehand from just a little bit lower than chest height, and I'm trying to guide it back cross court. And what you'll see is, because I'm using the ball machine, it's a similar feed each time. It's not exactly the same, but it's similar. It's bouncing in roughly the same place at the same speed with the same amount of spin each time, which means that I can set up in a similar position each time. The spacing from the ball is going to be similar, and the swing path is going to be similar. And that allows me to be much more consistent with the shot that I'm hitting. You can see that I can place it in, pretty much the same position every time, deep and cross court. But that's not what happens when you're playing points and when you're playing matches. So if we go back and we watch another point, you'll see that the hard part is every single shot is completely different. I'm having to react to what my opponent does, quickly read where the ball's going, and then set up in the right position. I've got to choose the shot that I'm going to hit, and then I've got to try and execute it, make the adjustments, and get the timing. And this is the way that points and this is the way that matches work. So this has to be reflected in the way that you practice. Unless you practice a different variety of shots and learn to understand how to make the adjustments, it's going to prevent you from improving. So the way that I recommend going about practicing is to, over time, slowly build up a repertoire of forehands, types of forehand that you can execute consistently. Now, a big part of this is going to be training and working on improving your footwork. It's one of the big things that lets players down. You need to be able to read where the ball is going, and then you need to have the appropriate footwork to set up in the right position. To help you with that side of things, I've created a free footwork program. I'll place a link up there, and I'll place a link down in the description so that you can get hold of this free footwork program and start to work on things. But in addition to the footwork side of things, you want to practice specific shots in isolation, starting with shots that maybe let you down more frequently or that you really struggle with. And the hard part here is that you need to work at the right level of difficulty. So often if you're playing with a practice partner, even if you're just working on forehand to forehand cross court, you won't get very many balls that fit the right criteria, which is why it's helpful to either work with a coach or a practice partner, just feeding balls out of a basket. But what I really like are ball machines. Ball machines are very reliable in terms of being able to hit the ball on a similar spot so that you can practice certain types of shots. And ball machines also don't steer you in the wrong direction with bad feedback. Now, there are some amazing coaches out there, but unfortunately, a lot of the time coaches aren't necessarily giving good feedback, and they can be telling players to focus on completely the wrong thing. Whereas if you've got a ball machine, you can set it up giving you the type of ball that you need to deal with, and then you can work on improving things yourself based on your understanding of what you need to work on. But then you need to choose the shots that you get frequently that you struggle to deal with. So if you really struggle to deal with moon balls, you need to set the ball machine up giving you moon balls. So rather than firing balls at you that are really hard and flat, practice doing the moon balls. And then you need to think through a couple of things. Firstly, the positioning. So when the ball is coming towards me, the flight of this ball, do I need to move forwards? Do I need to move back? How far away from the ball do I need to be? Now, for most players, until you get to much higher levels, the better plan on a moon ball is normally to move backwards, allow the ball to drop, and then take the ball as it's dropping around waist height. So that's a generalization that's going to be better for most levels. So you have to practice the footwork so you understand how to move backwards. And then you have to really think about the timing, because the timing is the critical part. And what I'm going to recommend that you try is, for each ball that you're dealing with, you think about your back leg, your outside leg. So if you're a right-hander, you're thinking about, when do I need to initiate my swing by driving through my back leg or my back hip? So if you're dealing with a moon ball, do you need to start your swing? Do you need to drive through that hip as the ball's bouncing, before the ball bounces, after the ball bounces? And you basically have to play around with that and habituate that. Try it before the ball bounces. So the ball's about to bounce, you try and initiate the swing. You'll probably find that's a little bit early on a moon ball, so it might not work. So then try initiating your swing as the ball bounces, see how that works, and then try it after. And for that particular flight of ball that you've set up on the ball machine, there's going to be an ideal starting point to drive through your hip. So you get lots of repetitions so you can get used to timing your swing on the flight of the ball. And then you change the flight slightly. So maybe you add more topspin or add more slice to the feed. You have it dropping a little bit shorter, a little bit deeper, so you change the speed of the feed. And now you get used to timing that same feed. So you might work on a number of different types of moon balls, training yourself to make the necessary adjustments to set up in the right position and to initiate your swing at the right time for each moon ball that you're receiving. Now, I know this sounds like a lot, but this is kind of how I've had to work through things with my left hand in order to get to kind of the 4.5 level relatively quickly. But then you've done it enough times, your brain now understands, okay, if the ball is flying like this, I do this. If the ball's flying like this, I do this. So then when you're playing points, you're playing matches, you're watching for your opponent to make contact, you're trying to recognize the flight of the ball as quickly as you can, and you're like, oh, it's doing this, that means I do this, and I initiate the swing at this point. And then that becomes a habit, and now you no longer worry when you get a moon ball in a match because you've seen it, you know what it looks like, you know how to make the timing work, you know how to make all the necessary adjustments. And then you do it with different types of shot. Now at the moment, one of the things that I'm trying to add in is trying to be more attacking. Like I can deal with moon balls if someone hits it hard and flat at me. I can deal with all those shots pretty well. So now I need to start adding attacking elements to my forehand. So I'm working on things like the short forehand. So this is how I set it up. I'm moving into the ball. I'm thinking about the footwork. I'm thinking about the flight of the ball. When do I drive through my left hip to initiate the swing? And I'm getting lots of repetitions, building up my understanding of what the flight of the ball means, playing around with what I do with the sequencing of my body, with how to adjust the angle of the racket face and the exact swing path to get the ball to dip and land in the court. And then once I've done enough repetitions like this, I'll be confident going into points and matches. As soon as I recognize the ball short, step in, and I've done it, you know, hundreds or thousands of times. So again, this might sound like a lot, but this is a process that I found worked really well with my right hand and allowed me to get to a pretty high level. I'm now going through the same process with my left hand, and I feel like it's allowing me to play a decent level of tennis, and it's steadily improving. So I'm very confident that if you approach things like this, it'll be very beneficial for you. So you've got to focus on the important stuff. That's always setting up in the right position. Once you're in the right position, then you can start to play around with the timing, but you've really got to get enough repetitions in of a particular type of shot until that shot basically becomes a good habit, and now you can execute it in a point and execute it in a match. So that's how I approach things. Give it a go. Just a reminder about that free footwork program, the link will be up there and it will be down in the description. If you have any questions about kind of the approach that I use or kind of how to set things up, or any comments about what I've talked about today, I would love you to leave them down in the comment section. If you found the video helpful, give me a thumbs up. And otherwise, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, if you could do that, that'd be great. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time.